RMF peers, we are glad you're still with us. I know last week got a little deep, maybe a little, uncomfortable or, woo-woo or open-minded, and we'll kind of still segue a little bit into some deeper topics this week, and then next week we'll have a nice guest for you all, which will, level some things out. But this one's a really interesting topic today. We're going to talk a lot about the clock and what this essence of time means in terms of, well, some practical ways of like, what does time actually mean and the clock mean for when you guys come into the gym. But we'll start off with really this essence of like time and how that creates this perception and awareness with us on our day-to-day activities, and really just coming back to this idea of like, how can we just be here in the present moment, even though we always have time running backwards, forwards, and so on. So let's take our 3 breaths, let's get organized, and let's make it happen. So all we're going to do right now is just decide to take this essence of time and to look at it as a gift. Just the ability to have this life that you can be present in, you can look back at, you can look forward into. I'm just coming back to this idea that we're always in the right place at the right time. We decide to look at it like that. Take our 3 breaths. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Hold your breath. Let it out. Sit up nice and tall with this one here. Deep inhale. Exhale. Talking about time, let's take a 5-second inhale. Go ahead. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2. Exhale. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See how the clock changes things a little bit here, y'all. All right, joke quote, throw down.
All right. So I have a quote from Dr. Martha Beck. She's a sociologist. She's an author. She wrote Expecting Adam. She's a bunch of other books. She's great. She was recently on the Huberman podcast. She got interviewed. So if you want to listen to a good podcast from her, the quote is, "Emotional discomfort, when accepted, rises and crests and falls in a series of waves. Each wave washes a part of us away and deposits treasures we never imagined. Out goes naivete, in comes wisdom. Out goes anger, in comes discernment. Out goes despair, in comes kindness. No one would call it easy, but the rhythm of emotional pain that we learn to tolerate is natural, constructive, and expansive. The pain leaves you healthier than it found you." I thought this quote was awesome, especially kind of, transitioning into what we're about to talk about today, just, how you view things and how you view what happens to you, and, not experiencing anything painful, not making it sound like it's fun, but like viewing it from this lens of like, it does wash away something and bring something good. It does bring some form of growth, some sort of gift that, you just have to see it from that perspective to really, really grasp that.
Yeah, I think this is actually, what I'll say, and I think even a lot of things like, this could be triggering for a lot of people, because life is hard.
Yeah.
And we're all going to experience at some point something that will put you in a place where you have to make a decision if you are going to look at that from a negative, a neutral, or a positive. And I'm not going to say any of those are necessarily right or wrong, because part of, and like we always kind of talk about, like part of this human experience is to have that ability to feel, the ability to have emotional responses that pull you through these waves of ups and downs. And I think really where this comes down to for a lot of us is to just accept that we are going to have these things and really acknowledge that to the point where like it doesn't have to be perfect, one, and allow yourself to really feel those ups and downs. And I think that's actually one of the hardest things we do as a culture. And let me just say, for example, not too much of a tangent, but like I'm having a men's retreat this weekend. And one of the things I learned with a lot of these men's groups is like we're told to toughen up a lot of the time. Like it's a masculine energy to have to put up this guard where like I shouldn't be showing this sadness, emotion, or grief, even though I'm feeling it internally, right? And that actually blocks us. That does not allow us to fully express this human experience of what we're going through. And it also comes down to this choice, right? The big thing, what you just said was like, with, hate comes discernment, but like we have to make a belief system and thought pattern and thought form to actually look at it like that.
Yeah, because it could easily go the other way.
It could easily go the other way. And so this is hard because this is the triggering response. Like people are like, well, how am I supposed to feel positive after I've gone through the most difficult experience in my life? I lost ex-family, friend, relative, whatever. We could look at the situation in North Carolina right now, Nashville, like all these really difficult situations that maybe don't even have to do with us or whoever around us, or tragedies. And all I can say is that from experience, because I've been very fortunate enough and privileged to be in a lot of spaces with the work that I do with people who have gone through some of the most traumatic things you would, again, like these crises you would never even think about, whether it comes from like traumatic experiences, abuse, loss, these terror type of experiences that put us in these ground levels of fear. All I can say is like, when you finally have that opportunity to look at these situations from a perspective that there's something at the end of the tunnel, there's light at the end of the tunnel, there's something there that will allow me to find positivity. And it doesn't have to be right now. Grieve, feel these emotions, feel the experiences, feel the lows, but you have to try to thought form like there's something there for me. Where can we come back to gratitude? Where can we come back to the little things in time that bring us to the here and now? And that's the bigger picture from it. And that's what I've learned. And that's what I've been allowed to allow people to help with their situations. Myself personally, that's one of the things I told myself in the hospital every single day, or throughout the whole 3 years of my treatment. Something is that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I just got to keep taking action as best as I can in a positive way.
Yeah, and that choice is not always easy to do that. It's super hard, but like what kind of person you want to be at the end of the day that's what it comes down to. And I think the biggest thing you said is that the positive or the light, the most challenging thing is that sometimes it takes years to see it.
It takes years.
It could take years, and it's just like you got to have some courage to stick with it and stay the course.
Yeah.
Especially it could take 10 years, 15 years.
And the best part about it, like everybody's path is unique and different, but also extremely similar. Like the story always ends up the same for those who, like, for example, this woman lost her husband and it was traumatic and she wanted to not exist anymore. And the best advice that someone could have in that situation is like, how do you take action? Well, what can you create in this moment in your life? you don't have to necessarily accept what happened to you,
Mm-hmm.
but how can you come back to becoming a creator?
Yeah.
So what she did, what she was assigned, was to garden every day. You'll love this
I
story.
love that.
She was assigned to
Great.
garden every single day. And every single plant or whatever she was gardening at that moment, she started with a thought form is like, I'm creating a new opportunity for my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating a positive experience. Like something will come
That's
for
awesome.
me. Something will happen. And she ended up completely finding these whole new paths in her career and her opportunities. Not saying because of that, but because she started to reframe and create this new perspective. She came back to the present moment, the here and now,
Mm-hmm.
of like, I'm planting a new seed. We talked about manifesting and all these things the past few weeks. And, we all have these gifts. We all have these gifts of creating. And we can look at, this kind of goes off tangent. It's not too much, but like we have human design, we have astrology, we have Enneagram, we have a lot of tools that allow us to like really understand who we are and our gifts. And this is true. Like there is a probability scale because of what astrologically has happened from the location, the time, the circumstances of what we were born from a soul energy into a physical energy. And the probability scale comes back to choice because we have the decision to not do anything with our gift. We can just let our gift be exactly what it is, or we can make and create something more with our gift.
Yeah.
So I'll give a quick example. Like Steve Jobs, his astrological charts and his human design was all about him being some form of like an architect, right? He was going to build a company in some form of way. And he took that to like a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the probability scale of choice. Like he could have not have ever taken action, and he had a lot of trials and tribulations when it comes to like, why do we go through crises in our life?
Yeah.
Well, because that's our wake-up call. That's our awakening. To be like, yo, here's your gift. Go get that shit done.
Yeah.
Excuse the language here. But that's the idea of like why we go through those experiences, and we may not ever know for years and years and years. And like with my astrological scale, my human design, like my gift is about creating a social environment and community. Like that's really part of my greater gift. And like I'm doing it now, but like how do I continue to build on that? Because I want to be a creator in my own way. And so really not going off of too much of a tangent, all this really comes back down to is part of the human experience is acceptance, right? Accepting, where we are, how we got to this point, and then making a decision of what are we going to do with the time that is given with us. And one, you kind of talked about too, like, time in some way heals.
Yeah.
Right? Time will allow us to continue to move forward, right? We have whatever happens in our life, time will allow us to move on. But there's a lot of truth with time, and I think we're going to now segue into like really what's this whole concept of time? Like, what does it mean to be in the past, present, future, the clock, the idea of like all we have to do is decide what to do with the time that is given to us.
It's a lot. That's a lot.
I just went ham, guys.
Yeah, that's a lot.
This has been a thought on my mind for a hot second.
I mean, it's a couple thoughts. Is like, time does heal, but it heals if you allow it to heal. Like that's the first thing too. Like it sometimes the element of choice I don't think should be forgotten. Like how you want to respond to any of these situations. And it is really interesting to think about, like actually stop and think about time, because like, I personally don't, like how many people actually think about their lives, this life that we're living, as a finite start and end. Like I don't think about that a lot. I mean, I don't think anybody does, but it's true. It's like we have a certain amount of time. Like this is not, in this specific life, I'm not saying in like the cosmos, in this specific life, like this life is limited. Like and it's something that I think if you put it into some form of thought every day, like it's so powerful, and it's so I think empowering, and just thinking about parallels with CrossFit. I mean, like we walk in here every day, we have 60 minutes to, do a whole class. And, time for me was always like, that was when I started coaching, like that was one of the first things I really had to learn and master. Like it wasn't cueing, it wasn't explaining, it wasn't demoing, it was like using this time and using it in a way that like takes full advantage of it.
Well, one of the things, now we're segueing into the CrossFit a little bit, is like, I talk about this, and I wrote an article about the truth of time, and it started off with like the CrossFit anxiety that I always had with like the clock, right? And it has nothing to do with like managing class, actually as like a participant. And like there's this, what I call like a primal frequency, like when you hear 3, 2, 1, like just that sympathetic nervous response that your body has is like, it's empowering to the sense that like, because once you start to work out, like you just like time exists and it doesn't exist, right? And there's a lot of spirituality to that, but like I don't have that nervousness anymore when I do a class, because like I've bypassed that. Like I'm just like here in the now, but like I can realize, I look back at all those times, especially when competing. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's the nerve.
The nerves I would get when like, and you guys experience it too, when we do, especially when we'll do our, the open. Oh my gosh. Yeah. When you guys do the open and when you'll do the competition experience, but like just that 3, 2, 1, those moments before, and you have these just complete sense of nerves and everything's just kind of internally going on within you. And then once you start that workout, like you have this empowerment, you have this freedom of just getting into an experience where, you're working against the clock, but also like time is irrelevant. And you are now shifting your consciousness into a place where time is layered. There's no past, present, and future. You're just going, and you're just trying to focus on this element of like this next rep, this movement pattern, this efficiency, my breathing, so many variables. And like, that's kind of like the best part of it sometimes too. And I really am grateful for like all these CrossFit experiences that I had, where I had all these nerves all the time. And they still come to me. Like when we do the open, that's the time where I feel it. When we do our quarterfinals, like just there's like little, pieces of fear that settle in,
Yeah, I mean, it's the clock is interesting, right? Because I feel like it's such a CrossFit specific thing too. Like the 3, 2, 1, like. I mean, 3, 2, 1, go is like, it's like just like a CrossFit slogan.
It is.
But like, I remember I was talking to a member in here recently about like, he's been doing CrossFit now for like a year, and he's like, like the clock, that was the thing that I really had to get used to the most. Like first it stressed me out, and I was glad he said that, because like that's a totally normal response, because it is, I think it makes sense to be like stressed out by time and like things being measured, because we don't want to think in that way. But it's like when you view it as a measurable variable, it's like I feel like you're able to make better decisions, and you're able to make decisions that serve you and also like help you sustain yourself. And I wonder, like, taking that clock idea mentality and just like applying it to your everyday life, it's an interesting idea, right? Like, viewing, like actually viewing your day as like, this is how much time you have.
Yeah. And that's also part of like, for me, and I write about it, like I used to, actually not as much really anymore, because I've learned how to navigate these spaces more efficiently, but like time anxiety was always a big part of my life. Like never have enough, I have too much. It's just like I'm being pulled in these polarities of these time waves. And when we come back to CrossFit though, like, I mean, you guys can start to put this together in your own head of like, when you come to a class, you could look at it from the 60 minutes that we have here, like how that structured into time, right? We have a measurable, observable, and repeatable way of creating a class structure. But in terms of the methodology of CrossFit, the methodology has a saying, what it's called work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And what that basically means is, for the essence of time, right, across broad time, is that the variance of time is super important for our fitness.
Yeah.
And you guys can obviously start to understand that if you just look at the whole week of workouts of Wodify, or for example, today, right? Let's just say for part B, like that was a 12-minute workout, right? It was on the minute, and there's obviously time variables within itself, but like your total time of measuring was 12 minutes. Sometimes it might be, every 2 minutes for 12 minutes, or it could be some sort of interval. You work for 2 minutes, you rest for 2 minutes. And so time really gives us this wide range of getting different stimuluses.
Yep.
And part of the CrossFit methodology is like, we want to understand time from all these different variables. Right? I don't want to just be able to work for 5 minutes, 12 minutes, for 40 minutes, for an hour. Like, I want to have these different ranges of capacity within these spectrums of time. So for example, to make this a little bit more clear, scientifically speaking, we have in our biological systems, physiological systems, energy systems. So the energy systems, there's 3, general speaking, that we want to understand. One's the phosphocreatine, second is the glycolytic, and the third is the oxidative. So all these energy systems play a different role into the type of work that you do. So the type of work that I do for the phosphocreatine is very, very short bursts of effort. So we're talking about 0 to 10 seconds. Then glycolytic goes anywhere from 0 to 3 minutes. And then when we go into oxidative, once we start getting into longer time domains, 20 plus minutes. So there's a range of where do we go from 3 to 20. And that's where glycolytic actually kind of extends. And each of these energy systems play a role into what kind of fuel you're using versus just ATP, carbohydrates, fat. That's not really part of our conversation today. But really the idea is to understand that all these energy systems are really important to develop within your physical fitness, and how that clock and the time truly plays a role into measuring these things. So for example, today was actually a very glycolytic workout. Even though glycolytic goes to that 3-minute mark, because we have a little bit of work rest, we are still somewhat in this anaerobic, quote unquote, time frame of work. And so that's why you guys will have this little bit more of a burning sensation, right? Versus if we did, Saturday or Sunday, either the workout or boot camp, these longer workouts that are a little bit more, quote unquote, oxidative, right? These longer time domains. And so, anyway, just understanding those energy systems gives you a little bit better understanding of when you are coming into the gym here, time is a very, very important variable for how you are getting with the program, what that program is delivering for you. And so we don't want to get attached, right? Don't get attached to the bigger, it's a bigger message here, right? I've just talked a lot, right? The bigger message is don't get attached to, that 12, everybody loves the 12-minute time domain. I love programming it too, but everybody loves the, long 20, 30-minute time domains. It's all about having balance.
Yeah.
All about having balance.
Well, I think an interesting perspective on this topic relates to one of our new members. So shout out to Chris Pollard. He was talking to me. Chris is a endurance athlete. He cycles, he'll cycle 60 miles on a weekend, or he'll run, he's a marathon runner. He was saying to me last week, he was I'll run 15 miles and I'm just light. I feel like I'm lightly sweating. Then I come in here, I do Friday's 5-minute workout and I'm drenched in sweat, and he's I feel I worked more than I ever have when I'm doing these long endurance things, because it's a different stimulus for him. And I think it's, that's a cool example of just someone who's been a long aerobic,
Yep.
oxidative athlete for years and is now like dipping his toes into new stimulus, new ways of moving. And it's important to keep in mind, like when you program and you choose times, like you're not just, it's not random. It's not like on Friday you weren't like, oh, 5 minutes sounds good. Like it's for a specific reason. And, I think that mental approach in terms of time is something that takes people a little bit of, it takes people there's a learning curve to like really understand it. Like when we have Wednesdays, like we're trying to sustain output. We're not trying to, burn out in 5 minutes. So I think it just helps us like really managing time and looking at it from a more of a strategic view. It allows us to, make decisions and that allow us to be like our best selves. I think it's a very mindful practice.
Yeah, you said it perfectly.
How are you approaching that specific time?
Yeah, like you said it exactly. Kind of good way to segue. Like when you're here, right, you're strategizing your time. Like today, you're strategizing that minute that you have to accumulate those reps. The sumo deadlift high pull, right? Strategize, do 6 reps, take a time frame of 10, 15 seconds rest, do another 6 reps. You strategize that cumulative 40 seconds of work that you did, right? And this is for me, we're transitioning to like this outside of the box, idea of like, well, what is time really? What's our perception of time? Like, how are we always strategizing the time that we have throughout our day? And it sometimes gets overwhelming, right? Like, oh, I have so little time. I only have this time to work out. I have this time for my kids, and I have this time, and it's going to get harder for us.
Yeah.
We're going to have very little time because we're going to be navigating, little babies, right? But that's the beauty of the challenge is like, how do we continue to start to create a relationship with time? And for me personally, that's one thing I've really started to open myself up to is like creating this relationship of time and having tools for me allow me to really not think of time as an anxiety inducing component, but more of like a grounding concept. And I think really that's the hard part, because we're always like looking at our watches, looking at our clock. What time is it? How much time do I have left? How much time do I have this week? And, scheduling is important. Scheduling keeps us accountable. There's so many positives to it. And so really what we're trying to get to, just like we're talking about with the energy systems in CrossFit, is like, how do we bring this back to a whole, right? How do we balance out our schedules and our ability to navigate time in a productive way that allows us to have purposeful, positive, productive life?
Yeah, I mean, I love that way of putting it. Think about, if you come in here on a Saturday, you see that you have 40 minutes to complete this. It is a grounding thought, because you're like, all right, I'm going to approach my 40 minutes this way. All right, I'm not going to go crazy in 5 minutes and then be rolling around the floor. And, I'm someone too who used to like really see time as this limited resource and kind of get that tense anxiety from it. But now what's been a really helpful thought for me, and I think is really powerful, is viewing it, it's similar, same, but different. Like how you view a workout. Like, okay, I need to prioritize being like this, doing this. This is what I need to prioritize now. And it just helps me really like focus on what matters, what I value, and what is best for me and best for others. Because there's something too, when you think about time and what you do with it, it's really interesting to see the time that you waste. And I've noticed that. Like I set a limit on my phone. My Instagram and Facebook limits are 5 minutes each. 5 minutes. That's it. Enough time to post, check in, boom. But like, there's so much time we waste.
Yeah. No, that's very true. And there's also so much time that we maybe don't use efficiently.
Yes.
Right? Maybe not necessarily waste, but like we just maybe don't navigate into, and we maybe don't know how to navigate those times and spaces too. And so I think that's really where we just kind of got to open ourselves up to, this whole world of time. And, it doesn't have to be super deep for most, but, if you find like you're catching yourself in similar situations like myself, where like I get time anxiety all the time, where I feel like time is just going too quick or too slow. Like, what are the practices that you have? And yeah, use the gym as a tool, right? Start in here with, how you navigate workouts, and notice where like areas in the time here where you struggle the most. You were just talking about Chris. I don't want to go too much on a tangent here, but, we have an intern here, Alton, who, this is actually a sciencey concept to understand too, but Alton is a track and field athlete who runs 100-meter sprints and 400-meter sprints. So his time domain is limited to like a minute, right? And you'll see him when you walk in class. He's very fit in terms of his aesthetic, an amazing human being. But like, if he doesn't work out, like he gets taxed because his energy systems are kind of limited to that 1 minute. So when it comes to transferring from glycolytic to like an oxidative or a sustained glycolytic pathway, like doing workouts past, 3 to 5 minutes are going to be hard unless there's a strategy with time, strategy with your rep, strategy. So like that in itself, if you're thinking about right now, like where is time the hardest of me? Like for me, time is the most difficult in workouts that are like long and sustaining, right? Like keeping myself in a mental process where like people like Chris, if I went to go do 60 miles on a bike, like how do I break down that concept of time in my mind? And bigger picture with this is like those time frames that you have difficulties to manage within the gym might be areas of time where you have trouble adjusting to outside of the gym. And so, God.
No, I think what's been important for me as I've been reframing my mindset on time is I used to view time as something like there's never enough. Like we always lack time, but I have come to realize like there is always enough time. Like you have time. Like that was something I really realized, and it's helped me. It's really allowed me to be more grounded because it's just about what I'm going to prioritize. Like there is time.
There's always time, and that's always sometimes a hard selling point with, I've been in the personal training world. We work with new members all the time that come in and trial, and they're like, I just don't have enough time. It's like, well, yeah, we offer a 5 a.m. class if you make the time, right? And it comes back to that quote, the second quote I'll say, which is, we'll transition here a little bit, but my favorite quote of all time is, all you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you. So where's that quote from, guys? Come on.
Spider-Man?
No. Oh, Joe, you just broke my heart, dude. Oh, God, this needs to be clipped. Guys,
Doctor Strange? I don't know.
We need to clip this, please.
Spider-Man, Doctor Strange,
my
something.
My heart is so broke. I mean, listen, I get it, everybody, right? I did the whole Doctor Strange thing on you guys last week. I get it. Now, a lot of people are into superheroes, comics.
Oh, it's Lord of the Rings.
Harry Potter's, It's Lord of the Rings.
It's Gandalf. It's Gandalf.
It's Gandalf.
Sorry about that.
I make Lord of the Rings jokes here all the time with the PVC pipe, and only a few members get it with the "You shall not pass."
Gandalf.
But this quote, and I'll get a little deep. I might even cry a little bit. I cry all the time during the Lord of the Rings. It just was the wisdom, and this little background of the story is like, you don't know Lord of the Rings, again, you don't have to watch it. Just listen to the story. It's just this tale of an individual that takes on the most difficult burden where like nobody else can take it on. And so as he has this journey, the most heroic journey of all, and he has all these trials and tribulations, he's at a low point. Like you talked about in the beginning with your quote, like these waves. And so Gandalf just tells Frodo, the ring bearer, says like, all you got to do is decide what you got to do with the time that is given to you. And like Frodo's thinking about the past. He's like, why did I do this? Like, why did I take on this burden of going through this crazy, difficult, unfathomable path? And then he's also thinking about the future. Like, what if I fail?
Yeah.
What if I let everybody down? What if I don't get the ring into the Mount Mount Doom, and just everybody dies. The whole world is taken over. So he's like past, present. He's getting pulled in these two polarities, but Gandalf is just like, yeah, be here.
Yeah.
Be here in the right now. You have support. You got me. You got your squad, right? We're here in this moment, and let's just focus on like what's the task at hand now to allow us to make a positive impact and moving forward. So in kind of going with your quote in the beginning and just really this whole idea of, what you go through in the gym and how you make decisions with time outside of the gym, this really is always something that I come back to personally is like, how do I be in the here? And I say here as like holistically engaged, ready to embrace. And the now, and you can say now clock, where it's like there's the N.OW. And just finding that ability to like just be present. And it's just like there's 3 breaths that we take in the beginning of the podcast, whether if you guys decide to do it or you don't. Maybe we're like, oh, he's taking these 3 stupid breaths, but it's like, no, I'm trying to get us like to just chill the F out and just take a breath and just be in the moment without thinking about what we got to do on our podcast or what led us into this point, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just like, if I can do that more often, I'm actually letting go of control. And I'm accepting this moment for what it is.
Yeah.
Right. I know there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but like this time is a gift. I'm here in the moment. Let me just be present with it. Let me feel it. Let me understand it. Let me be with it. And then things will continue to play out in your favor once you actually let go of that control. And then you actually become in more control because you're just surrendering, accepting, surrendering, accepting, surrendering, accepting. And that's just a spiraling path and a wave that moves you upward and onward, right? But the second I feel like I got to control this situation of time, right? That's where we kind of get in that neutral or negative polarity.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a great mindfulness
practice.
practice.
That quote gets me hyped, y'all. That quote gets me
Gandalf was the first mindfulness. He was the original mindfulness master. Yeah, but it's what I think is interesting is like so many of us, like time anxiety is not unique. So many people have it, but so many people, even with time anxiety, are not taking advantage of the only time that actually exists, which is the present. Because people are, I mean, you see it if you just walk down the street or even go in your car. People are not here. Mm-hmm. People are everywhere else but here. I read Jonathan Haidt. I've shared quotes from him before. People are one of the things he talks about with like, especially in the digital age, is everyone's everywhere else but here. Mm-hmm. And like, once you realize that like this time is the only time that exists, like past is over, mm-hmm. future not promised, you're able to prioritize and be so much more grounded and focused because like you're here, you're doing it, this is your time. And, just being here with it and deciding what you're going to do with it in present moments is super important. Just like Gandalf was saying to Frodo, same thing.
Might tear up thinking about it, man. That scene makes me cry a lot.
So good.
So good. Dude, Spider-Man, come on. Dude.
I don't know. My brain's all over the place.
That's all right. It's all right. It's like me it's like me trying to remember somebody's name.
There's some good Spider-Man quotes, though.
There are very good Spider-Man quotes.
Good Spider-Man quotes.
Well, yeah, and it comes back to like, how do I just come back into control? We talked about that last week, right? And you could get really deep with this, and I could talk about quantum physics and how there are literally infinite parallel realities of you in all these different situations, past, present, future. But like, there's only that here and now moment. So that's what's going to be able to allow you to create the reality that you want and that you're designed to have with your gift. And then it comes back to that choice, right? We have to be able to take that idea and really decide what to do with it, but also sit with it, right? Because I think as we kind of wrap this up a little bit, I think one of the bigger things is, I just talked about like people being triggered by some of the things that we might talk about, because not like life isn't easy and not everybody
Yeah.
can relate. And, that's a reactive mind. And right now is probably when people are in the most reactive mindsets, right? I mean, we're literally getting ready for, a presidency here, right? And so everybody's reacting to everything, and there's so much polarity.
Yeah.
And right now our culture is just needs to find tools to be able to like come back to center, right? And come back to this ability to just, what can I do here with myself?
Yeah.
Because like we are the change that we want to create, and that could be a topic for another time. But like, what are the tools that you have that surpass time? What are the tools that you have that allow you to be present? And that's why we do things like, introducing the cold plunge and the sauna, because like you have to be present. Like you have uncomfortable stimuluses. And so, for me, I use many tools, and meditation being one of them, and plant medicines to be another wonderful tool, and just finding ways to like be more grateful and connected with myself and others. And I hope, a lot of you start to really try to navigate like what that tool is going to be like for you, because we're going to continue to need that as things continue to evolve in our society in the best ways possible.
Yeah, and I think the last, important thing to remember and share is you don't always have to do something with your time. Like especially in our culture, in this like
Yep.
productivity, like go world, like it's fine to just be with your time.
Yep.
And like it's just how you frame it. Don't feel like every moment of every day you got to be doing X, Y, and Z. Like sometimes just be with your time. Like we need a little bit of quiet. We need a little bit of solitude. We need to take care of ourselves.
And again, that's like a beautiful thing to say. And like, we all have that ability to do that.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, we're not maybe all as capable, with busy lifestyles. Again, this is where time, like scheduling, kids, family, work, like all over the place. And like, where you can find the time, you can find those 5 minutes to, just like we did in the beginning of the podcast, like take just 3 breaths. That's what I say at the end of the article. Like when you find out that you are lacking time, just stop what you're doing and just take 3 deep inhales and slow exhales. And I promise you, you'll feel an energetic shift of like just being a little bit more grounded in that here and now moment, so then you can now react in a more productive way that, again, allowed you to observe, allowed you to sit with that moment. And that allows you to create an expanded awareness, an expanded consciousness. So the end thing here is leave you with a question, just like every week, is like, when do you notice when time feels different? When do you notice in your day-to-day activities and lifestyle where like, when do you feel like there's so much time? Like, wow, I feel like there's so much time that I have. And then when do you feel like there's like no time at all? And then when do you feel like you're just like, I'm like so in this moment, time is irrelevant? And start navigating that and just like build your awareness and think a little deeper on it, right? And I think that's where we should start. Like try to think a little bit deeper with like what your awareness with time is like, and just continue to be curious with that.
Yeah.
And I love having the opportunity, when people that they can create a time for themselves, where like, for example, what I'm doing this weekend and then the following weekend, of like taking a day to like honor your time for you to like really go inward and go deeper is super valuable. And every time I'm in those experiences and helping people with those experiences, like time is completely irrelevant. It's like, wow, where'd the time go?
Yeah.
And then like that's how you know you are really truly being in that present moment.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, I think that's a great way to end. Something I kind of have to think a little bit about too.
Yeah, we all. I mean, look, I'm talking about it. I talk about all this stuff, and I don't want to be like I have the answers to everything. I talk about it because like this is stuff I have to work on myself, and I'm continuing to learn and to work with personally as I continue to grow. So, we're all in this journey together, And the more we kind of recognize that, like this is, you know, a journey from you and I and the community, and, you know, take what you want, take as you want with it. You know, you don't have to fully buy in or really, you know, trust, quote unquote, our process, but I can guarantee is if you start to be willing to open up the curiosity to some of these things, you will start to notice and be aware of like this concept of time and how it starts to shift a little bit differently in your life. So that's all we got for this week. We wanted to, you know, give you a broad range of, you know, CrossFit, science, spiritual, as always. Like that's really our duty here. But next week we got a guest. All right, we got Lee McCormick. I'll spoil it for you guys.
We're spoiling it.
I'm gonna spoil it for you guys, just so you get super excited. Because I know you don't want to hear Joe and I talk all the time. But we got Lee. Okay, and she's a 5-ammer. So shout out to you, Lee, if you're listening to this. Get hyped, get ready, and all of you guys are gonna love to hear what we got planned for next week. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Just Show Up podcast. All right, we'll see you next week. Have a beautiful rest of your weekend.
Adios.